This
See,
conference will now be recorded.
Karen is going to record, as we just found out. And any adjustments to the agenda, Karen? You're on mute.
You're muted.
Can I make one adjustment, please?
Yes.
So I'd like to move the town manager's report up underneath warrants to treasurer.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. Any other adjustments? No. Okay. So approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of June 2nd, 2021?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 2nd, 2021.
And I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as presented from June 2nd. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. Warrants.
I'll make a motion to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer as presented upon completion of review.
And I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer as presented upon completion of review. So we'll go ahead and review them now. Karen, you want to run through those?
So payroll warrant dated June 4 through June 18 in the amount of $18,332.18.
Does anybody have any questions on that? Eileen, you all set?
Yeah, I'm all set. I'm good.
All right, so the AP warrant.
AP warrant dated from June 5 through June 18, 2021 in the amount of $91,762.43. If you have any specific questions, I have invoices.
Innovative municipal products. Right.
Which one, David?
Innovative municipal, 392631.
Innovative municipal, that's chloride for the roads.
Okay.
Gary Brodus.
Let me look at that one. That is for the kiosk down at Sand Hill.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that.
Okay. Go. When you're ready.
Hello,
Oh, sorry.
You're not muted.
Sorry.
So that was the kiosk down at Sand Hill.
All right, any other questions?
And the $26,500 community bank payment, that's
That's to pay off the 2016 Putney Fire Department Chevy.
got it.
And the a payment for the 2017 Western Star dump truck, which I think that's the final payment as well.
Got it.
They both are marked final, so.
Yes. Yep.
Good. Clean up the capital plan a little bit.
Nice.
All right, any other questions about the AP? All right, so it's been moved and seconded to approve and execute the warrants as presented upon completion of review. We have completed review. If there are no further questions, then all those in favor? Aye. All right, thank you. Unanimous, Alyssa, on that one. Okay, so our next topic would be, you want to go right to your manager's report, right, Karen?
Yes, let me just locate it. I just had it. Okay. I'm kind of like, I'm in a different spot here. Sorry, people.
That's your office, right?
I am in the office and I was all ready to go and I'm like, where's my, well, I don't know. Well, that's bizarre. So I guess you're gonna have to go into public comment. I'm sorry.
All right, well, are there any public comments on items not on the agenda? I can't see everybody at once. So if you have a public comment, either speak up now or put something in the chat. And I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so it doesn't sound like we have any public comment. Karen, did you find what you were looking
Yes.
for?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. I have it.
So we'll go back to town manager's report.
It was with my accounts payable. So in your packet, there is from the lister's office, the 411, which shows you town values, assessed values at 261,109,067. That is up from last year. So I want to point out that assessed values have gone up by $2,915,912. So that's promising. Given, we just went through COVID and I'm not seeing a lot of zoning applications this year. So this is good news. So
Karen, I don't want to throw a wrench in this conversation, so if it's not an easy answer, don't bother. Do you have a sense of what that does to our CLA? Because I know the sense of the listers, and actually Eileen, maybe you.
yeah, Eileen might be better to answer that question, but I think things are, because of COVID and what's happened with the real estate market. I can't answer that question.
So obviously the assessed value is independent of the market, the real estate market. I know that the listers have a policy that essentially if you sell your property, I can't remember their percentages, but if you sell your property 15% above, and don't quote me on that one, but 15% above our assessed value, they will send a letter requesting a site visit to correct anything that was on the property record card. And that's just to make sure that, any improvements that haven't been captured in the last however many years it's been, 6 or 7 since we got reappraised. Just to make sure that they're up to date for that. They're not chasing sales, but that might account for some of that raised value. As far as the CLA is concerned, I haven't been paying that much attention to the sales equalization study in Putney, so I don't know what it would come down to. I know in Brattleboro we're just it's just through the roof, and there hasn't been a lot of inventory at Putney either. So in the end it might not matter that much. I'm not sure.
All right, and just out of curiosity, when will we know that for sure, Eileen? Is that something we'll wait a whole nother sort of tax cycle for?
Yeah,
Or?
you mean the CLA? The CLA gets certified in January, I believe.
Okay.
And it's a 3-year study, so it'll take this last year will be
Right.
part of it. which will influence it to some degree, but there'll be 2 other prior years before that, which will hopefully stabilize it.
So if it's a significant shift, which anecdotally it certainly seems that way, it's likely to be a couple-year lapse before that really shows up clearly for us.
Yeah, it'll all depend on whether this is a blip in the market or whether it's a real trend.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So I want to add to the educational tax rate is not out yet. So normally we send tax bills out in July for the first payment due in August, but we haven't seen the educational tax rate yet from the state. And I don't know when that'll come, hopefully by the end of June, so we can send out tax bills on time. So I sent you the current financials late this evening. I'm just going to give you a snapshot of what's happening. The general fund is, we have about $10,000 as a balance in there, but we are out like $73,940.49 for 2020 property taxes, and some of our revenue lines are low as well. So if I can capture some of the revenue, we may end up on a positive note, but it's hard to say because we still have one more warrant at the end of the month for June 30. So I'm kind of watching that very carefully. We did receive a overpayment from the school district last week of $60,664.46. That did help the general fund a little bit, but again, we still have one more warrant to go. Highway department is in good shape. You know, they're paving Hickory Ridge, which is about $100,000, might be a little bit higher than that, but they're sitting in a good position right now with a fund balance of $191,499.77. And the library's in a positive as well with one more warrant. Water and sewer, we have one more billing cycle, which the meters will be read next week. And any monies collected in July can be put back into this fiscal year. So right now they're both in a negative a little bit, like $20,000, but I'm not concerned about it because we still have one more billing cycle to go. So that's where we're at with financials right now. And most likely I will have another set of financials for the June 30 meeting. And they'll be more accurate. But if you have any questions on the financials that I have sent you tonight, please, you know, ask questions. You can call me up, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Summer Matters 2021 Grant Award. So the first round, we did not get, we were not awarded the grant. We had to go back with some questions that the program asked, and the second round we ended up getting awarded $29,488.37 for the Summer Matters grant. And it's Summer Matters for All. And there's 4 organizations. So the town of Putney for the pool, the library, Putney Cares, and Putney Food Shelf all collaborated on this grant, and we'll be working together. So it started June 14th, so we can start spending, and the award ends September 15th.
Great. Congratulations, Karen, and thank you to you and to everybody else who worked on it with you. That's excellent.
Yeah, Hannah Pick, Ruby McAdoo, and Emily Zervis.
Good. Thank you all.
That is really good news.
And is there any sort of a town match on that, or is that just straight grant?
Straight grant. It's federal funds.
Nice.
So there's a lot of paperwork that goes with this grant. So there's going to be a lot of administration to it, but we'll get through it.
And just make sure you divide that fairly so it doesn't all land on your office.
Well,
I mean, I know a bunch of it will, but you know, the folks that helped you with it, you know, if their organizations are benefiting from it,
right.
have them do their part as well. Not that they don't. I'm not. I
No,
don't mean to shout.
yeah, we had a meeting today and everybody will track their own expenses and we have to put it into a spreadsheet. So, and I just asked them to track their own, send it to me, and then we'll upload it to the sams.gov portal.
Good.
The next item is broadband status. I thought by now that DV Fiber would have made a decision about a vendor. 2 weeks ago, they met. There were like 10 proposals that came in. 2 proposals were selected, and they went through the night and did not make a decision. There was supposed to be a meeting last night, and I haven't heard anything. Michael, you're here. Do you have a report?
I wish I did. They were actually supposed to meet tonight.
Tonight.
And they were supposed to meet, we've been meeting online. However, since the governor lifted the emergency order and the Secretary of State issued a ruling that we need to go back to the meeting protocols that we had before COVID, they had to cancel tonight's meeting so they could set up a meeting where they had people on site as well as people online. So the meeting has been pushed back another week. The hope is that they will make a decision next week, and I'll be glad to report on that, hopefully at your next meeting.
And can you remind us, Mike, of exactly what is this decision? This is about a vendor for the whole kit and caboodle, or? Yes.
Yeah, they have two vendors bidding. The decision is who they're going to go with, and this is for the countywide build out.
Good.
So it's in some ways it may seem redundant to what Putney's trying to do, but it's still not clear yet whether the RFP, whether Putney, if Putney does a townwide RFP, whether they'll commit to building out to the last mile, last address.
Right.
Whereas the CUD's charge is that that's the plan, last address, last mile, and the funding through the state is prioritizing CUDs.
Sounds like good news. Hopefully, I wish them all well. And just since you brought it up, or since it came up, just so people know, we also are under the same lifting of the governor's orders, which is part of the reason why Karen and Alyssa and also John Johnson are all at town hall, so that there is a live presence for this. But we will be, presumably by June 30th, we will have figured out how to have us live with remote access for everybody that chooses to have remote access. So we are currently and will be looking to both fulfill the governor and the Secretary of State's directives and be as inclusive as we can in that process. So,
one of the things we found in the legislature is participation by people viewing and being able to testify is way up, and that's a real benefit from COVID, making this accessible through the technology. I think you folks have experienced similarly much more participation, and the plan for the legislature is to maintain that hybrid, even if when we go back next January. And this is especially beneficial for people from Windham County, from Bennington, where, a trip to Montpelier is not an easy thing. So one of the good things to come from COVID.
Definitely. Yeah, no question. All right. Well, thanks for the update, Mike. Karen.
So the other two items on my town manager's report is State of Vermont license agreement at the fire department. So that is for the hazmat vehicle that is down there. That agreement was sent over to Larry Slison's office for review. And I did get a draft back this afternoon late. And I will send that back over to the state to see if they have comments. So I haven't really had time to look at it. I will in the morning and then send that back off to the state and get comments from them. The Putney Historical Society draft lease agreement status. So Josh and I and Lisa worked on it last week. And I sent that draft, revised draft, over to Larry Slison's office as well. That has not come back. So as soon as I get that, Josh, I'll let you know.
And it's the same draft that has been circulating for a little while, which actually, has that just been with us or has that been out? I can't remember, Karen.
Did we get the latest? I know we got a draft. Was that before or after you guys met?
That was before, Eileen.
Okay.
So we made some minor adjustments, but
we didn't change things. Essentially the discussion, and this is now what Larry's looking at, was terms of commitment on our part and on their part, and then sort of distribution of
utilities,
labor, utility, various different aspects of how an arrangement would work. And we don't know how Larry's going to respond to in several places the use of the term "in good faith," because we sort of have to take this agreement in good faith because we don't know how it's going to progress. And so Larry may comment on that, but also just so you do know, Karen and Lisa and I talked about that pretty extensively, and we all agree that it's impossible for us to know what that future relationship is going to look like, et cetera. So to give it enough flexibility to be a meaningful document, but also have enough bite in it, takes some fudging. So that's where we're at. So we'll see what Larry has to say and go from there.
Okay.
and that's all I have.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next is our select board items for discussion and action. And first topic is illegal burning and junkyard ordinance. Karen, do you want to give us sort of a review of where we stand on this?
I can, because some events have transpired. So Upper Cassidy and Easttown Farm, there's 12 people that signed a letter about, there's a few properties up there on Easttown Farm, but this one particular one up on Upper Cassidy has a lot of vehicles and scrap metal, and there's an old cabin, and then there's a mobile home as well. Tom Goddard did meet with the property owner and the tenants yesterday. He did a site inspection up there. Also, this piece of property is, there's some illegal burning going on up there. So Tom has
there's alleged illegal burning going on.
Right, alleged illegal burning. And Tom has spoken to Tim McNamara. He's with the state A&R. And he's also spoken to Vincent, and I can't pronounce his last name, but he is the state person that deals with the junkyards. And he has been in Putney working with other properties to get their properties cleaned up. So both Tim, Tom, and Vinny are going to work together. The property owner is on board. They're going to put a plan into place. Tom will have that report to both state consultants, and then they're going to put the plan in place. So the property owner was very thankful that Tom reached out to him. And so that's where I'm at with that.
Just one comment on that. You know, having the state involved in this is tremendously helpful for us because as we talked about so often in instances like this, you know, our ability to enforce and have any teeth behind an ordinance, because we, you know, we don't have a local junkyard ordinance, and we've talked about it many times over the years, probably 5 or 6 in my time being here. And the problem is, you know, there is a state junkyard ordinance that we can follow. So when the state, it took quite a while, that number actually, it used to be that you could have up to 7 vehicles and then it dropped to 4. And that's when the equation sort of shifted as far as the state getting involved. That's been helpful for us to have somebody that can really come and say, these are the steps you got to do, because it's just outside of our realm of expertise. So that's definitely helpful.
What's the time frame on both the proposal and the action? I live adjacent to the property you're talking about.
So, Michael, it can take up to 2 years for somebody to clean up their property. It depends on the owner, if they're willing and actively, you know, working to get that done. The state does the enforcement, the state can fine, but they'll work with the parcel owner. But I mean, unless they're not actually doing something, then they're gonna, you know, they send out letters, they monitor the site, and Tom will be involved in this particular site because there's more than just junk going on. You know, as a health officer, you know, he's looking at that too. But, you know, I mean, it's really difficult because some situations, and we have more than one property in Putney, some situations are totally different, you know, and some people don't think they have an issue with their property. But the fact that the property owner did show up and was willing to listen to everyone and, you know, to move forward to do something about it, I think that's positive action right there. So, and I know I've spoken to more than one neighbor up there, and I've always said we got to be patient. You know, it won't happen overnight. And I know the frustration, and I've been up there, I've seen it, and there's more than one property up in that area.
You know, one of the things that certainly the state has to take into consideration, and I don't know whether this is circumstances with that specific property, but you know, the financial burden that you place on a taxpayer, you know, what's the outcome? And expediting it, yes, is great, but if they expedite it or try to expedite it to the point where it forces a landowner into a more challenging financial situation than they're already in, that may not be the desirable outcome. So that's where that sort of balance of time frame comes, and it's frustrating, certainly. I do think, Karen, I don't know whether you got a recommendation about this, but as far as if there were to be illegal burning going on, I would assume that it would be not only legal, but appropriate for a neighbor or an observer to call that in. Is that correct?
That is correct. So if someone sees someone burning something, they should call the fire department, and they'll have to go up there, and if they witness it, then something can be done right at that time. So it's when it's happening is when that person needs to make a phone call to the fire department.
And if you don't reach the fire department, do you have a recommendation, Karen? I mean, I know that, you know, Tom is there a lot of the time, but not all the time.
Right.
So reach out
Russ,
to you or
yeah.
911, or what would you say?
I don't know if 911 would respond, but Russ Ellis is our fire warden.
Yeah.
So he would be the second person to contact.
So maybe for the convenience of the people who have contacted you, Karen, you could just send them an email letting them know that and letting them know the appropriate numbers to contact.
Right, because if this is an active parcel that this may be happening on, you know, I'll make sure there's more than one number.
Yeah, that'd be great. And as Karen alluded to, there are other properties that have had complaints about them. We're sort of in the same boat of working with the state and with the homeowners to try and figure out whether there are meaningful steps that can be taken. Again, it can be very challenging for people. And I don't say that to allow people to do dumping they shouldn't be doing or having more vehicles than they should have, but I do say it as a reminder to some. It's so tempting to sort of say, why doesn't this just get dealt with? And it's often way more complicated than that. And so, as Karen said, patience, and I know it's frustrating, but it's a reality. David?
This is a community, and we have to remember that the people are members of our community too, and try to approach it from a place of helping them, not judging them. And if we can do that, I think that will be helpful. That doesn't mean we won't come up against challenging situations, but it's impossible to know really what somebody else has been through or what is behind this. I'm sure it's more than just laziness, and there's a lot there. So there's been many instances where you know, I felt the urge to want to clean things up on other people's property, and I remember that good fences make good neighbors, and talk to your neighbors. But so,
Although in this instance, I wouldn't, in the instance of this kind of thing, I wouldn't necessarily recommend talking to your neighbors.
There is no neighbor. The neighbor is deceased.
Sorry, what's that?
Neighbor is deceased. The person
At least one of the occupants of that property, yes. So the current landowner is not in residence. That you know, I think that's a double-edged sword. Probably one, them not being there might make it harder to communicate effectively. The flip side is if they are generating income from that, I believe that allows the state, gives the state a little bit more bite in their ability to do some enforcement, because then it's more of a landlord relationship. So I don't know that for sure, but that is my understanding of it. And I know that's a conversation that's being had in this circumstance. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
Yes, Howard Fairman here. Actually made it to the public meeting at great trouble and expense, but what can I say? So anyway, notwithstanding all that's been said about this issue, 2 points. First one is, in Vermont, any outdoor burning other than brush with a burn permit is illegal.
Yes.
No question about this. And as far as disposing of vehicles is concerned, Kramers will pick them up for free and run them through the shredder and sell the scrap metal. They do this all the time. So getting rid of vehicles is no cost to the person who has the vehicle.
Unfortunately, you've got a valid point, but that is not. I don't know where we stand right now, but recently anyway, the price of scrap was so low that it was very, very hard to find people that would do that. You know, if you're if you can get $150 worth of metal out of a vehicle, which is sometimes the case when the prices are pretty good, that's one thing. If you know, I mean, there was one point over the last year that I was talking to one of the scrappers, and they were saying, you know, they weren't even getting, I think, $50 or $60 a vehicle, and then it makes that very hard. You're right, and I'm sure, I think that's the approach. I'm aware of at least one other property where Vince, who works specifically on vehicles, has been working with people to take advantage of exactly what you're talking about. It's strictly financial incentive that creates that incentive. So when the financial is not worth it, that's much harder to come by. But thank you for that. And absolutely, I definitely agree and know that illegal burning of any sort is illegal burning. So, and that's, you know, people should feel comfortable calling in illegal burns, definitely, because they put all of us at risk. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Fairman.
to clarify and emphasize one word that I said, which was free. Kramers pick them up. They don't pay anything, which is how they can make some money on it.
Right. No, I understand that, so unless you're talking about a specific organization, many of the people who will do that aren't doing that as readily right in this moment because the price of scrap is so low.
And I emphasize once again, if you didn't pay anything for it, there's money to be made in it.
It depends. I mean, if there's trucking involved, if there's time and labor involved, and you're paying, yeah, I'm aware of it because I actually get involved in it quite a bit on properties that I work with. You know, it's a volatile market, and when the market isn't good, it's much trickier. But I'm not disagreeing with you. But when the numbers, even if you're getting it for free, it's not always easy to find somebody who's willing to do that, because if the numbers are low enough, then even free doesn't necessarily encourage them. But yes, I agree with you. It's definitely something worth exploring with people. And, you know, maybe we can try and get from Vince, Karen, some resources that private individuals might be able to find if they wanted to take advantage of that.
Yeah. I'll see what I can find out.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong though, we are talking more than just cars. There's a bunch of other
property.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I mean, that's one of the other challenges when you get somebody interested in something like this, is that, you know, the scrap metal that's cast iron, for example, is great. And you can find a number of different people who are happy to come and pick that up. But if it's ductwork or fencing, it's really hard to find somebody that'll do it. So, you know, ideally what you get is somebody who commits to taking the whole kit and caboodle, but that's not always simple to do. But there are various ways to do it. It can end up costing, you know, there's a variety of equations involved. So, but we're working on it. All right. So next, sorry, next on our list would be letter of intent for MRGP grants and aid.
So that is Municipal Roads Grants and Aid Program that we apply for every year. So Putney is looking at a distribution from the state of Vermont, $18,400, our 20% local match. Cash or in kind is $4,600, so a total of $23,000. And this particular grant helps with stormwater runoff on our town roads, which means ditching and rock and, you know, vegetation if it's needed. So grants and aid helped to do part of Holland Hill last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I recommend that the select board take advantage of this grant. And Brian was talking about Putney Mountain. possibly this year, but it is rather in different areas because of the stream. It may be difficult to connect. And he likes doing like the whole road if he can, and it eliminates, you know, moving around to different parts of town.
So is Putney Mountain Road the road that has the highest percentage of high priority spots on it? Is that what he's saying?
It does have a large amount. I'd have to look at the report. There's high priority all over town, David,
Got it.
but trying to capitalize and, you know, do the most amount of work, you know, with the grant and not go back and forth to different areas. Like, was it 3 years ago, Josh? It was Tavern Hill, Hilo, Biddy, and there was one other one.
Yeah.
I think that was
Yeah,
the first year.
I can't remember which the third was, but
Yeah,
yeah, I think the upper part of Priest Drive got done at one point too.
yeah,
Yeah, and you know what we have largely used this money for in the past, because we have, well, partly because we have our excavator, which is great, particularly for this. But we've used it largely to purchase riprap. And Karen, I don't know where we are. I know that when we were partway through one of these grants in the past, the thinking was that it was not worth using our own riprap because then we don't get reimbursement for it. Is that still the case? Do you know? Now that this was centered around the question of the purchase of the gravel pit and
Right.
what the timing on that. And my understanding is that in order to have this money pay for riprap or stone chunk, that we have to purchase them from somebody other than ourselves. Is that correct?
right. And that's Brian's thinking, if, because it's grant money, if we purchase it from like Full River or somebody else, you know, it's an expense that goes towards that grant. But I mean, Brian does a really good job with the grants, you know, because it's labor. He tracks everything. Holland Hill, obviously, you know, it was more than the grant, but the entire 3 miles was done, you know, so he does
Yeah.
capitalize. He makes money off the grants. That's what he does.
Or he, perhaps more accurately, he saves the town money,
Yeah.
or generates income for the town through those.
Right.
He definitely does not make money off them, just to be clear.
No, maybe those weren't the right words because somebody could perceive that differently. Yeah.
So Karen referred to the report, and essentially what this is a report that was done in combination with the Wyndham Regional and the state a number of years ago. And this is all about reducing runoff and improving water quality, et cetera. It's the same stuff that influences farm water. There's a whole bunch of different aspects of it, but this one obviously is specific to town roads. So it's really improving, trying to reduce the amount of wash and runoff water, and therefore runoff material that ends up in streams and brooks and rivers and other bodies of water. So the state, this is something that is looked at, and we also, the more of it we do, the better it is for our road use monies coming in. So it's something that's all around beneficial to us to stay
Right.
ahead.
The other thing too with this work, so by 2025, we have to have like our high priority hydrologically connected areas completed. And when I looked at the report last year, we had like 60 that need to be done by 2025. So money is a factor, and time is, and labor is the other factor.
Yeah.
You know, so we're, you know, Wyndham Regional Commission works with all the towns in Wyndham County, and they too agree that it's unrealistic the schedule to get all this work done for small municipalities. You know, unless we subcontract it out, you know, and which is gonna cost money, but realistically, we just don't see how we're gonna meet the schedule.
Well, and we've been pretty aggressive in pursuing it. So as I said earlier about some other things, you know, I'm sure we're not alone. There are towns that are struggling to even.
Many.
So I think this is something that will be revisited by the legislature or the
Yes.
Department of Transportation or whoever the power might be. David?
Well, I had a talk with Brian last year when he was doing Holland Hill, and he said, yeah, it was unrealistic, and that he was talking with other road crew managers, and they were saying the same thing, and that it's going to have to get revisited. Are the 60 sections all of the sections, or only the highest priority ones that we have to do? It's a total of 60 sections that need to be worked on?
Yeah,
Of
the high
priority.
of the high priority, yes.
There's 60 highest priority, or there's 60 sections total?
No, 60 high priority, like,
All right, got it.
But some of those, David, I mean, you know, some of those can be, not that yours was simple, but some of those can be as simple as something like what you did out.
right.
You know, it might be placing riprap in 12 feet of area above a culvert. So, you know, they're not necessarily all big projects like this, but, you know, that also highlights what you were saying of are a number of the high priority locations on Putney Mountain. Because if you could knock, well, Putney Mountain, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if it has a dozen of those locations or at least a half dozen or something. So if you knock, you know, a certain number of those off, that's helpful. Eileen?
How did they decide high priority? Was it just runoff, or was it?
It's an evaluation of, it's a combination of, well, basically funnel area for certain things, and then the amount of damage that already exists, the condition of the existing infrastructure that's there, and the likelihood of, you know, a poor outcome if there's a dramatic occurrence. So it's all, there's all criteria that they evaluated on, and then they come up with this list of priorities.
So it's more about the road itself than the runoff going into the stream, the water quality.
Well, the whole purpose of this really is to look at the relationship between those two. So, for example, on Tavern Hill, which, as you may or may not know, is a fairly long stretch of steep hill, it was a combination of grading it slightly differently so that the run-up doesn't accumulate as quickly, rip-wrapping along the sides, improving some of the drainage where it enters, and rip-wrapping where it heads towards the stream. So it's really, they really go hand in hand. And that's sort of the idea, is if we can change some of our management of the roads and improve the infrastructure at the same time, the ultimate outcome would be less stuff dumping into the water. So it's really, there's a variety of different aspects, but some of them, for example, include, at least to a certain degree, changing the grade of a road in order to improve that. So bunch of different.
Okay.
All right, so what do you need from us, Karen? Do you need approval to submit that?
Yes, I need a motion to approve it.
Did I hear that motion?
I make a motion to improve the letter of intent for the MRGP grant and aid.
And I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the motion to submit a letter of intent for MRPG grants and aid. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
just to add a point, there seems to be an indication that towns throughout the state are finding the deadline is too tight.
Yes.
I would suggest that we bring this to the attention of our excellent Wyndham 4 and Wyndham County legislative delegations, and ask them to work with their colleagues to get the deadline extended, which they certainly can do, but they have to know that it's needed.
Is that duly noted by one of our representatives who's present?
Thank you.
That was Mike. So yes, duly noted. Thanks, Mike. But you're right, Mr. Fairman. The other thing I would say is that, you know, that shouldn't by any means make us think that we need to pay less attention to it. You know, we're going to be better off. This is a better outcome to do regardless. So the more we can get done in that time period, and also the urgency appears to increase the availability of grant funding. So that's an advantage as well.
Yes.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing as I don't hear any, and I don't see anything in the chat, it's been moved and seconded to approve the letter of intent for MRPG grants and aid. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Good, thank you. All right, Gathering Place, 5K run in Dummerston.
So in your packets is an email from Margaret Lewis of the Gathering Place. 2 weeks ago, she approached the town of Dummerston to see if there could be a 5K run through the gravel pit. The town of Dummerston voted on it that evening, and they declined to have this road race go through the pit. I'm bringing it to the board's attention because the pit is co-owned by Putney and Dummerston. So you should be aware that this request has occurred and what Dummerston has done. I also spoke to Wade Mercer, our passive representative, and it was recommended because it is a liability to both towns.
And just to be clear, that passive is the insurance agency that we work with through the VLCT.
That is correct. So there is a liability allowing the race to go through the pit. What could happen, according to Wade, is that the town of Putney and Dummerston would have to have every person sign a waiver. So it's a hold harmless waiver if somebody should get hurt. The Gathering Place would have to provide a certificate of insurance, and on that certificate of insurance, the additional insured would have to be both Putney and Dummerston. I do know anything occurring on Route 5 requires a state permit as well. So given all of these facts, you know, Dummerston elected not to have the race go through the pit.
So given that that's the case, I think it's a moot point for us. I guess what I would say, is there anybody here by chance from the Gathering Place that is willing or interested in speaking about this?
There is not.
Okay, so they may have moved on. You know, the only thing I would say, I mean, it's too bad because of course we'd like to be supportive of this, but it's significant liability for us. That's not something we can do. If the Gathering Place figures out a way so that they could have all those waivers in place, et cetera. I mean, I don't, it doesn't sound to me like we need to vote on it if Dummerston has already voted on it, because again, it's a moot point. If the Gathering Place will be able to figure out how to make this happen with no liability to us, I think we could consider it, because I know it's a good thing for them and a good thing to be doing, and we don't want to discourage that, but yeah, take that liability on us. Eileen.
So as far as I was aware, the last thing that we got was a response from Margaret Lewis, asking the town of Dummerston whether they would accept a certificate of insurance. Was there an answer to that?
I did not get any to that question, Eileen, and they're actually, Dummerston is meeting tonight,
Okay.
so.
Because I'm just thinking that if we were in favor, if they were able to get that kind of, if they could get the certificate of insurance and they were able to have a waiver, it might be in our best interest to vote on it tonight, assuming everybody's on board, so that they can move forward in the off chance that Dummerston accepts it as well.
Well, I mean, not having that document in front of us, I would be hesitant to vote on something that we aren't looking at. And I agree with your intent, Eileen, but I guess my feeling would be, if that turns out to be the case, since we haven't seen a document, but if something is presented to Dummerston tonight that's compelling for them and they either overturn or change their vote, then we can certainly revisit that in, from my perspective, as timely a fashion as we need to, in order not to hold them up. But
So the race is not until September 18th.
Okay. So, but yeah, why don't we see what happens in Dummerston and hold off on a vote for the moment? Does that sound fair? And if it shifts, then we'll consider it. All right. Hounding on Putney Mountain.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
the previous agenda item,
Yes.
I'm thinking, as I tend to do, about what actually is being said here. And I believe what is actually being said here is we are being asked to allow members of the general public to run through our working gravel pit. Now, I would note that a hold harmless agreement, although I'm not an attorney, I am certain that a hold harmless agreement is not valid if a personal injury attorney shows up alleging negligence on the part of the town of Putney or the town of Dummerston. So I would suggest that this is actually quite deep water that you're considering getting into, because what they are actually asking is, may the general public run through your working gravel pit? I think any private landowner, any private gravel pit owner would say, no way under any circumstances, for the reasons I have mentioned.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree with you. And if they were to present us with something like this, and I'm guessing Dummerston would be coming from the same place, it's something that then we would have to send over to legal counsel to have them look at it and see whether, I agree with you. We would not, I mean, it would be a combination of both our legal counsel and our insurance provider looking at it and saying, yes, this is sufficient or not. But yeah, no, I share the concern. And again, it's too bad because we'd love to be able to support something like this, but I'm guessing the liabilities are likely, risks are greater than we want to incur, but thank you for pointing that out. All right, so Hounding.
So in your packet, there is information and emails from people. I've had numerous phone calls about hounding on Putney Mountain. So it's in front of the select board. So there's an opportunity for the board to write a letter if you're opposed to hounding on Putney Mountain or for it. The letter's due by July 5th if you're interested in writing a letter. So I think there's some people in this meeting that want to speak on this. And are you familiar with hounding?
You and I spoke a little bit about it. I don't have, maybe this is it. I don't easily have access to this document. I'm not sure where in the packet it is. Can you either tell me where it is or?
It
Well,
would be right after the gathering place email.
it was in the packet.
Yep,
This is the one that starts, with, do we want hounding on Putney Mountain?
Yeah.
yes.
This
Yep.
Fish and Wildlife Services proposing. Blah, blah, blah.
So, and
Just one
to
page.
be
There's no
clear,
other
this is,
documentation though with it.
what's that?
You said there were emails from other people with it, and I don't see them. I only see the one page.
Yeah, I don't know that we got those. To be clear, this is a piece of land that is owned by the federal government or the state of Vermont.
It's by the federal government. It's Silvio Conte National Wildlife Refuge.
Okay.
And that consists of 212.46 acres in Putney. And so basically it borders Parkman Wood Road. I don't know if I can share this map without messing everybody up here.
I just don't have this part of the packet somehow. I'm not sure sorry. When was that sent, or can you resend it to me, Karen, maybe?
Sure, I can resend it to you. It was in the very first packet.
I thought I was on that, but I don't seem to have it.
It was Saturday when I sent it to you.
Saturday, which was what? Let's see. Oh,
That was a while ago.
yeah, exactly. Saturday. Is that a day of the week or what's that?
It is for me.
I think it was the 12th, I think.
I just texted it to you, John.
All right. Do you know how many emails I send?
I
I
I
know this is a lot to us.
know how many I get, and you're only a small fraction. So here we go. I think I might have it now.
You have it?
I'm working on it. Hang on.
Let me see if I can. Sorry, people.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
as we are under the Vermont open meeting law and we're talking about hounding, which appears to be a term of art with which I at least am unfamiliar, would someone please explain what hounding is?
I think we're getting there. Sorry, I'm trying to just access. Yeah.
Do
Okay.
you want me to read? Yeah, do you want me to read this?
Yeah,
Can you
that would
read?
be great.
Eileen?
All right.
That'd be great.
I'll read. This is what it says. Do we want hounding on Putney Mountain? The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is proposing that it be made legal on the Putney Mountain unit of the Silvio Conte National Wildlife Refuge. Make your thoughts known. Please write to the refuge at Hunt Fish Rule Comments at FWS.gov and note Silvio O. Conte NFWR Hunt Fish Plan in the subject line and let them know that you're opposed to hounding on the refuge. The deadline for public comment is July 5th. Your email can be short. The most important thing is that they hear from you. If you don't know what hounding is, hounders unleash packs of powerful radio-collared hounds on a lone bobcat, bear, coyote, or other wildlife. This occurs not only during the hunting seasons, but throughout the year during hound training sessions, which last all year for some species. The hounds often chase the animals for miles until the exhausted wild animal either collapses, climbs a tree, where they're often shot, or decides to stand its ground and fight back. This places both wildlife and the hounds in danger, since the hunters are often miles away with only their handheld GPS tracking device. Many consider this activity akin to animal fighting, which is illegal in Vermont. Hounds also pursue non-targeted animals, including deer fawn and moose calves. Additionally, they pose a danger to Vermont's threatened Canada lynx, who have been found on the refuge. One of the refuge managers shared her concerns with Vermont Fish and Wildlife back in 2015, but VFWD chose to take no action. Hounders use large pickups with kennels on the back to transport their hounds. These vehicles often have out-of-state license plates, as hounding has been outlawed in many neighboring states. The hounders sit in the cab, following their dog's progress on their iPhones or iPads. And then there are a couple other articles that are attached to this as well. And I believe that's it.
So
So that was a petition, I believe, that was being circulated.
very basically, it's the use of GPS instrumentation attached to dogs in order to track wildlife to a destination, which then the owner of the dogs can go and locate that wildlife. So, Ellen, are you here to talk about this?
Yes, I thought it might be helpful to the select board and others about it, an experience, sort of an experience I had in Middlebury in October of 2020. I was up in Ripton, and my friend and I hiked, you know, a path right off the main road there, not out in the boonies or anything. Well, lo and behold, the next day I picked up the Addison Independent and found that a 60-something couple who hiked that same trail regularly, like almost daily, with their dog, which was a small dog, maybe under 20 pounds. I used to have a dog like that, so I was immediately interested, were attacked by these hounds who were 30 minutes ahead of the hunter. The woman probably mistakenly picked up the dog to protect it. And of course, the dogs then attacked her. She rolled down into a stream bed. The husband got between her and the dogs. It was a real mess. Luckily, nobody was seriously injured, meaning dead. Eventually, the hunter came upon the scene and out of the woods and got there, but he was 30 minutes behind. So I just thought I would share that. I have no negative opinion about particularly hunting with dogs. This was just an experience. I didn't have myself, but I was on that exact same trail, and it really freaked me out. So I'm not clear, just as a person that is out in the woods a fair amount walking, how a hunter through a GPS, and since they're using hounds who have gotten a scent or a sight of a prey, how you call them back. And hence it would seem to be potentially kind of dangerous just for local folks like me. So I just thought I'd share that. You can all Google the Addison Independent and read the stories. It ended up, I think, going to Montpelier about this situation. It really created a big dust up.
Given that Montpelier came up, Mike, do you have anything to add to this?
I don't have a lot. This is something that the legislature may take up next year. There was something put forward this year, but given the prominence of COVID and all the other things were taken, it was put on the back burner. One of the things we need to find out, though, is if the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution would supersede any state laws that we passed in this regard. So that's one of the pieces we have to find out about this. But there is some efforts to address this in the state legislature as well.
Eileen.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the federal government has jurisdiction over that land over state law. That's my understanding. But any legislation that that you guys would pass in Montpelier would apply to the rest of Vermont. So that would at least deter people for that, for most of the rest of the land.
David?
I don't know how to keep a hound, how to teach a hound where a boundary line is unless there's a fence.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
If whatever it's chasing runs onto private property, then the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction over that, do they? And
No.
I would think that that would be a good point.
This is Christine Couturier. Would it be okay for me to speak?
Sure.
Hi, I am an abutter to the Silvio Conti Wildlife Refuge. I live on Putney Mountain Road, and I'm quite concerned about the possibility of hounding up in this area. I don't know if it's seen as a wide open forested area, but in reality our property is zoned rural residential, as is I think all of Putney Mountain Road, but we abut right up against it. It's a high traffic area with hiking connecting to the Putney Mountain Association trails and other trails. Lots of hikers every day with dogs and children on it. And it's about 700 feet, the border is about 700 feet from our home, so a football field or two from our primary residence. And then the border of our property is about a half a mile we share with the refuge. We've put a bench by a little body of water right there and are just feet from the border. So if dogs came along that trail, they would easily come onto our property, following the trails that we've made within our boundaries that lead right to our house. And wildlife comes along those trails into our little house and orchard area. So we've had bears come along, deer, and then we chase the bears away as they get into our compost or eat the apples, and they go right back to that trail over towards Silvio Conti. So hounds would be following their prey to our back door, basically. We've raised chickens and lambs over the years that I'm sure would be interesting to excited hunting dogs. And we work the area between our house and the Conti Refuge border because our forest management plan. So we're back there as well. So I'm quite concerned about this. I plan to write a public comment against hounding in this area, but I think those are some pretty good reasons not to have this happen up here.
So, Eileen?
So I'm assuming that hunting is allowed in the wildlife refuge currently? Is that correct?
I am not sure that hunting is allowed there. I'm not sure.
I don't know either. It seems to me that if no hunting is allowed, then I'm not sure why this is coming up at all.
Well, yeah, I would tend to agree with you, Eileen. That would indicate that. Yeah, it's a good question, because if it, I mean, it sounds, from the little I know about it, it sounds like this is potentially applicable to all federal lands. But if it's only federal lands, whether hunting is already allowed, then we'd have to know that first. I'm not, and I don't get the sense that any of us sitting here on the select board or Karen is necessarily knowledgeable enough to really understand the implications of this. And I'm wondering whether.
I think it is open.
You think it is open?
It says right here, Silvio Conti Wildlife is open to the public for hunting, fishing, wildlife observation and photography, environmental education and interpretation.
So that's clear. Yeah, Swift and then Karen.
I was gonna just go off of what you said, where I thought you were going. This piece of it seems like nobody on this call is knowledgeable enough to necessarily make a call on this. There's nobody here on the other side of the aisle saying, actually, here are some really good reasons for why this is going forward. And it just doesn't seem like it would make sense for the town to sign something that they approve or disapprove with the amount of information we have right now.
Well, we don't, Karen. So just to clarify, do we have something presented to us, Karen? Because if we do, it's not clear to me that we are being asked to sign, or is this is really just informational at the moment? Is that right?
So I tried to do some research, and Ellen, I think you gave me some links, but they only went to meetings that have already occurred. So I wasn't able to pull anything up, but so I don't have any information from the other side.
Yeah, I don't recall sending you, Karen, links that would give you information from the other side. I apologize. I'm not sure if that was anything I had access to. And I certainly can't be I have no knowledge either. I just saw the result, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really what this serves as is a public notice that this discussion is going on. And I think that if there was a group of abutters, landowners, residents, et cetera, that wanted the select board to consider submitting a letter of support against or unsupport, or however one might term that, that maybe the best way to do that would be for that group of folks to present the select board with something they would like them to consider adopting as a resolution. I think that, you know, we have to do reasonable due diligence, but we also would welcome more information based on our current circumstance. So I don't know, Karen.
Okay, so I did get 3 emails sent to me and a few phone calls, and Ann Carey also dropped something off tonight. And she mentioned that there's northeastern bulrush plants on this property. So, and the refuge was purchased to protect that plant. So with hounding, you know, that does it, you know, impact, you know, that plant somehow?
I don't think it, my guess is it's not incumbent upon us to evaluate anything, and I'm not dismissing what you're saying, Karen. I'm just saying. So, I mean, essentially, we would be, I think, at the most, writing a letter of our. I mean, the federal government obviously is going to do what the federal government's going to do, regardless of what we do. But if it's helpful for us to write a letter of support in some way, I would certainly entertain somebody presenting a letter as such with specifics in it. You know, I think that right now, again, this sort of serves as notice that this discussion is going on and that we should all seek to inform ourselves a little bit about what the nature of it is. And, you know, Mike obviously also has heard about this, and if it's a state level issue, then, but it sounds like it's largely out of our hands. Any decision making, it's more about our
I think people are looking for a letter of support from the board.
Yeah.
Well, I like Josh's idea of having the public come to us with something that's solid that we could either support or
if I could just, being a member of the public, ask the question, what does solid look like?
Well, basically it would be a draft resolution. So you would say, we would like the select board to consider adopting a resolution in which so-and-so, 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 and or, I mean, if it's a resolution or drafting a letter, you know, if our only opportunity to comment on this really, I mean, again, nothing we do is going to be binding against the federal government making a decision. So, you know, if it's a letter, drafting that letter and saying, and then presenting it to the select board and saying, would you consider signing this on behalf of the group of voters who are presenting it?
Okay, and I believe the comment period from U.S. Fish and Wildlife ends on July 5th.
Is that right?
Yes.
And,
so if that gives, I believe our next meeting's June 30th.
Yes.
So
And Karen, did I send you the email? I sent in my comments because the Fish and Wildlife has put it out there. So I referred to the article in the Addison newspaper, Addison
Yes.
County newspaper. And Karen, did I send you the email address?
Yes.
Okay, so you have that. Okay.
So this letter that we have, sorry, it's just not identified for me on here. Is this letter that's in our packet, Karen, is this from you, Ellen, or from somebody else?
No, well, I wrote an email. I didn't send a letter. It was just as a concerned citizen. That's all.
Okay.
And I have an email from Maria Ogden, Henry Walsh, Jesse Heller.
I just don't see who this particular thing that's in our packet is from. So I guess.
Okay, Josh, this is Ann Carey, if I might speak for just a second.
Sure.
I understand that you would rather wait 2 weeks and get something that's more clear. But do people understand what the Silvio Conte Wildlife Refuge is like? It's a scattered series of ownership of some land. It's connected by the Connecticut River Valley.
Right.
And different states have different amounts of land. New Hampshire has some pieces that are 6,000 acres or 1,000 acres. Massachusetts has small pieces, maybe an island in the middle of the Connecticut River. It's very scattered all over the place. And this is clearly a rule. We will have to find out. It definitely applies to Putney Mountain. It may apply to other pieces of land that are part of the refuge that we're not concerned about. Clearly, this is a move on the part of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to change the rule to allow hounding in this particular piece of land in Putney. And I think it would be reasonable for the town to have an opinion about it based on the abutters and what the residents feel about it. There is also more, Putney Mountain Association obviously has the trail system through. They also have sheep on the top of Putney Mountain every summer, which would be threatened. And I really think the Fish and Wildlife Service should have it pointed out to them that they acquired this piece of land to protect this endangered plant. And having a pack of hounds run through, followed by a group of hunters, they're not going to be looking and saying, oh my God, here's this endangered plant, let's not crush it. And so I think they need to be reminded that they have a contradictory goal here for themselves. But I think it's perfectly reasonable for the town to make a comment on this rule change.
Yeah, the only thing I'm saying is that I certainly don't, I mean, a letter, the nature of sort of the statement you just made, I could consider signing. I'm not sure, I can't certainly take it upon myself, and I can't ask Karen to take it upon herself to draft a letter based on this, because we just don't have enough information. So that's what I'm suggesting, is that there's a group that would be willing to come together in order to do that homework, lay out, and, again, if it was sort of a resolution-like letter, whereas there are sheep used for grazing on such and such land, and whereas it is a protected species, and whereas there are 14 abutters, and whereas so on and so on and so forth, then that's something we could consider adopting. But I can't come up with all that on my own, and I know that's a challenge, and I'm not trying to poo-poo the idea at all. I'm just saying somebody needs to do all that homework and then present something to us that we can get on board with.
Okay, as long as everyone's dedicated to meeting the July 5th deadline, and you're going to meet again on the 30th, I think that works, and I'd be certainly willing to help with that.
Yeah, I think that's the only question, and Karen, this might be a question for you or for John, is what the nature, I mean, we need to know who it's going to, what the nature of it is, because if it's something we were actually adopting, it's probably better that it would be signing on to a letter if that's appropriate. I just don't know what's appropriate. So, and maybe, if you could do, you and some others could do some homework and figure out exactly what you would like us to consider and then go from there, I'm certainly willing to consider it.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I agree with that. And again, like Josh said, I mean, at the moment, I could say, you know, I'm against this, but I wouldn't be able to give any particular reason why. So it sounds like you have some very good information, and Ellen as well, and probably a bunch of other people on this call. So if you know, if you do the legwork, so to speak, you know, that would help us a lot.
Okay,
All
And
righty.
it's, I mean, I think Christine also obviously has being an abutter with the nature of the property and how it's laid out, you know, that's the kind of stuff that's pretty compelling in a letter, in a statement saying this does affect the abutters' lives. It's not like a chunk of land in the middle of the river or somewhere else.
yeah, or New Hampshire's 6,000 acres.
Yes, I'd be happy to contribute to that effort and help them realize that this is not a remote area by any stretch of the imagination.
Sounds good. Good.
Okay,
David?
circle back. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to say, so people understand how I feel about it. I've been a hunter all of my life, and using hounds with the radio collars and tracking devices has got nothing to do with the kind of hunting that I learned how to do. And that's not hunting. I'm sorry. You know, so
And we have allowed hunters to come on our
and sign something. So
and I'm not against hunting in every case, and we've given hunters permission to come on our property and hunt.
thank you.
So it's not about hunting.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty clear case of unfair advantage,
Yeah,
you know?
it's fishing with a net.
Yeah.
Yep.
Having a gun isn't, and a brain like ours isn't enough of an advantage, then I don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for your interest. We're happy to participate as
Thanks
as
very
we
much.
have. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Um, yes, Mr. Fairman.
I second what Selectman Babbitt said. I am a native Vermonter. I'm not a hunter myself, but I come from a family in which we have had generations of hunters going back to the 18th century. And what they're doing, hounding, is by no stretch of the imagination hunting. It is slaughter. And actually, so there is no case whatsoever for allowing hunting in the Silvio Conte National Wildlife Refuge. Because if hounding is allowed there, the wildlife does not have a refuge. And I will further point out that under Vermont statute, if a Vermont game warden saw hounds pursuing game unattended, the game warden is authorized to and would shoot the hounds dead on the spot.
Yep. Thank you, Howard.
Yes, thank you. No, I would agree with everything that's been said. So no, I think it sounds like a horrible practice. You know, people, of course, are welcome to come and present an opposite argument if they would like to at our June 30th meeting. But I can see many compelling reasons why I don't feel it's a great thing to. But again, it sounds like it probably has very little to do with us in how this decision-making process is made, but if we can contribute in any way, that's fine.
Chairman,
right.
I have to complain here. The essence of governing is to take a position, not to try to say why there is nothing you can do. Public comment has been asked for by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I think we can be pretty sure that if there is strong public comment from people who live near this parcel of the Silvio Conte National Wildlife Refuge opposing it, that they will decide not to allow it. So I in no way say that there is nothing we can do. What we can do is oppose it unanimously and vociferously. This is what they are asking for. They are not asking us to say, well, we're not sure what we can do. What do you folks want to do? They want to know what we want them to do. Thank you.
No, point well taken. Thank you. No, and I mean, that's sort of what I was saying before of, you know, I mean, it's not our jurisdiction, so we can't we can't have jurisdiction over it, but we can certainly comment. And I agree with you. I think that is the thing we can do, and we should. So with the help of the folks that are involved and able to put the information together, hopefully we can do that. All right, let's see. I'm trying to scroll back to the beginning of my thing here. Hang on a sec.
We're on equity and inclusion.
This has disappeared on me now, so, okay. So equity and inclusion, the Equity and Inclusion Committee, or the working group, met last Wednesday and sort of finalized what we felt was a document that we could all agree should be brought to before the select board. I know you haven't had it for a particularly long time yet, so I'm not sure that we realistically want to try and take action, but I wanted to make it clear that it's a public document before the select board and available to the general public. We worked, Swift, I'll let you comment anytime you want, but we basically worked with the resolution that we had and sort of the sense of the tenor of conversations that have been going on, et cetera, in order to try and come up with a as concise a charge as we could that still gave enough leeway for there to be growth from it, but also what seemed to match the desires of the people who have been involved in getting it to this point. So, so that's there for your information. That will be on the website, Karen, probably, or we can put it on the website if it's not already. Swift, you want to add anything?
I don't think so. It was a really, once we actually got down to it, was a really great process, getting specific and visioning, and really hopeful for the next steps for this, and just looking forward to it.
So the next step would be, and I think we'll do this, give the two of you some time to digest this and have an opportunity to think about it, and then you could either communicate with Swift about that or Karen about that, and we can continue the discussion at the next meeting, and hopefully well, I guess if you could get feedback to either Karen or Swift, if you have feedback, that would be great. And then maybe Swift at our next meeting, we can see what the feedback from David and or Eileen was and see how to address it.
Okay. Do you know when your next meeting will be?
We haven't set one. I was just going to say the same thing. Is there a timeline that you guys like what week? And we're pretty good at getting meetings kind of scheduled.
Okay. Well, we the select board meet again on the 30th. So if you were able to get feedback, if you have it, to either Karen or Swift by the end of the weekend, maybe we could plan on hopefully having a meeting next week sometime, Swift, to talk about it. Does that sound fair to people?
Okay. Can do that. I did take
one thing that
look at it.
Right.
That's all.
One thing that someone sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just someone that I did have read over it just in the membership drew attention to the fact that in the proposed charge, we're talking about that members need to be interviewed by the select board before they're voted upon. That's not a requirement for other committees right now. So if we add that in, we might have to change that for other committees, that people have to be present at a select board meeting in order to be appointed and have an opportunity for that. That was what they were saying, that wasn't a requirement right now. So either we would have to change that for all committees, or we could take that piece off. It's not a very big piece, and just drawing it to your attention.
That's a valid point, definitely. We should look at that. And I mean, typically people, well, it depends on the nature of the appointment, honestly. You know, on some simpler, more straightforward things, people write a letter of interest. I think that's always the first step, is there has to be some written, documented letter of interest. And then the select board considers that. And yeah, good point. I will have to think about how to address that. Eileen.
So when I was appointed as a lister, the first step that I took was to be interviewed by Jordy. So he was, he kind of undertook that vetting process. And then I think, again, that happened with the Planning Commission. I sat down with Pip, and then he made the recommendation that I be appointed. So I'm not sure if they want to have the select board sit down with every member or have the existing members vet their proposed appointees.
Some combination of the two. I mean, we had this discussion in the committee group as well. I think that the nature of this committee requires that there's probably input from both groups, I think, which is not always necessarily the case. So, but yeah, we can revisit that. I think I'll read it over myself and think about what my opinion on it is, and then if the two of you want to offer an opinion on that, that would be good, and we can think more about that. But I agree.
It could be a two-step process. But I'm just thinking, if you want to have people that are on a committee that can meet together, do well with each other, have not work well. That's what I'm trying to say. Play nicely together. So you probably want to have it at least be a two-step process.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, this is certainly particularly important in this group. It's also particularly important to have representation. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we did talk about this in our working group meeting of sort of what's that balance of interview, et cetera. Mr. Fairman, I think you were trying to jump in.
Yes, I would like to clarify a point that Select Person Shute made. She alluded to the positions of Lister and Planning Commissioner, both of which are local officials per Vermont statute. Member of the Town of Putney Equity and Inclusion Committee is not a local official per Vermont statute. In other words, you have full jurisdiction. The members of the committee should not be handpicked by anyone. They should come forward with letters of interest and be vetted in a public meeting by the Town of Putney Select Board, because this is the way it is supposed to work.
Correct. Yes, I agree with your points. Of course, in addition to that, as you know, or we've discussed before, the select board we do appoint at will. So, I think it is incumbent upon the select board to make a judgment if somebody is properly suited to a committee, to any given committee or not, and that's our quasi-judicial role. So.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, the Town of Putney Select Board, no Vermont Select Board is quasi-judicial. Check the definition in statute. And as for the question of, yes, indeed, the Select Board does have jurisdiction over appointing members of committees. I would say it is deeply suspect when the Select Board chooses to exercise that authority by hand-picking the members, as opposed to allowing people to come forward who might be anyone from the community, not necessarily among those who were handpicked, because implicitly one is excluding certain people in order to handpick others.
Valid point. David.
I think they should definitely be put in letters of interest, and they should come before the select board. I think I think this committee is very different than any other committee, and I think as many eyes on it, the more eyes on it, the better. And I think basically agree with what Howard's saying. Yep.
So Elena, I think it's Elena, either Elena or Ted, but posted in the chat, is the process of choosing the committee agreed on by Mark and Eitan? Yes, the charge that has been advanced is the work of myself, Swift, Eitan, and Mark, and we all agreed that this was what we would forward to the select board for their review. Michelle Alexoff has also been present at all meetings and has been very kindly and generously taking minutes for us.
Amazing. All the praise to Tall.
But she has commented some, but it's mostly been a discussion amongst the four.
Michelle just texted thank you in the chat.
All right, any more on this topic?
I'll just say, just if folks are curious, we are recording and posting our meetings. So the recordings, if minutes or recordings, whatever works best for your brain, there are recordings of our meetings, of those subcommittee meetings, also posted under the Equity Inclusion tab on the website.
As is required by open meeting law, or at least to have them. It's not required that they're recorded, but it's required that they're open and that there are minutes kept. But all right. So our next topic is in-person select board meetings resuming, and I addressed this somewhat earlier, but we'll just quickly. We are planning to resume fully meeting in person on June 30th. That would mean that we would be meeting, I think the intent for the time being anyway, Karen, is to meet at the fire station. Is that correct?
Oh,
You're on.
muted.
That mute button.
Maybe the last time you have to do that.
I'm recommending the board meet at the fire station starting June 30th. And you may need to make a motion because the town hall is our designated physical spot for select board meetings. I'm recommending the fire department only because we can have BCTV there. We now have GoToMeeting. We would have to switch our platform to Zoom. We can utilize the flat screen TV at the fire station. So their setup is similar to the library when we did our public informational meeting. And I think it's going to work best as a hybrid if this board decides to continue with hybrid meetings. The fire station for now is set up to do that. The town hall is not.
So how much is BCTV going to be? Would they be doing the audio? I know that was an issue when we tried to do it in the fire department, fire station back in, I don't know when that was, January. No, it was after Thanksgiving, I believe.
No, I think they're going to be fine because it worked fine for the public informational meeting over at the library. So I'll have my laptop and we'll hook that up to the flat screen. There's all kinds of logistics, but I know it'll work better at the fire station. It does not work here. We have 2 residents in the meeting room right now at town hall. They're on a very small laptop. You know, it's just not, if we had more people, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know whether we need a resolution for it, but it probably wouldn't hurt. But just notification that the next select board meeting will be held in the fire station and that our select board meetings may be held there for the foreseeable future until we can work out technologically what we might need in order to hold them back at
Town hall. Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I can help you out here. I've got my handy remote open meeting law.
Good.
1 VSA Section 312C1, I quote, "The time and place of all regular meetings subject to this section shall be clearly designated by statute, charter, regulation, ordinance, bylaw, or resolution, or other determining authority of the public body." So therefore, if you're going to have a meeting on the 30th at the Selectboard, at the fire station, you need, I guess in your case, it would be a resolution stating so this evening.
Sounds fair to me. So I would entertain a motion to resolve to meet at the fire station on June 30th and subsequent meetings every other Wednesday from that time on until such time as we adopt a different resolution.
So moved.
Precisely.
I'll second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve a resolution to meet at the Putney Fire Station on the meeting for June 30th and on other meetings, regular select board meetings after that, until such time as we determine otherwise. Is there any further discussion on that?
Is there gonna be any other protocols? Are we being masked, or we're dispensing? I'm personally vaccinated, so I'm not worried about it. I'm just wondering if there's any.
It's a good question. We should explore. Yeah, my own personal feeling would be that people who are fully vaccinated would be welcome to attend without a mask, but we should probably follow up with the Secretary of State's office or the Department of Health to find that out. So I'm not sure about the answer on that, but when we post
guidelines, there are some guidelines.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other advantage of the fire station is that it gives us room to spread out in a way.
It's pretty big, yeah.
Have reasonable physical distancing we can, but David disappeared for a moment, so we'll hang on one sec to vote until he's back on. But in the meantime, do we have any?
Ann, could I comment or ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Since there's a moment, like if I wanted to come to the fire station just as a person to the select board meeting, will the information about masking or vaccinations and so on be part of the agenda that's posted?
Yes.
Can I ask a question, John? Just
hang on one sec, Mary. So Karen,
Mary
so Karen, when we post the agenda, let's put the information about our masking requirements or lack thereof, include that in the agenda.
Okay.
The other question I had, Josh, though, was in terms of
Sorry, Mary, you're breaking up. I can't hear you, Mary. I don't know whether you. I'm going to jump to a conclusion that perhaps the question is, will members of the public be able to attend via virtual? And the answer is yes. So we will also post that information on the warning for the meeting as to how to attend from a remote location. Right, Karen? We can have that.
Yes.
And I don't know whether that was your question or not, Mary, but that was my answer. So it was moved and seconded to have the meetings at the fire station for the time being. If there's no further comment on that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, Michelle has posted online. Just want to say that I've really appreciated the accessibility that online access has afforded members of the community who would otherwise be unable to attend in-person meetings, and thank you all for making this option possible. So Thank you also. And yeah, it's great. I mean, it's really nice when people are able to attend. So it gets a little dull when it's just the few of us that sit in a room. So this year has shifted that equation, and maybe that'll remain for a while. We'll see how it pans out.
I'll have to see how these work in real life.
Yeah. Let's see. So, board meetings resuming. I think that's all we have. So we have other business. Is there any other business that people would like to bring up?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I'm actually going to be backtracking to comment on items not on the agenda because for some reason, we here in the select board meeting room in the town hall were not admitted to this meeting until item E of the town manager's report. So two questions. First one, immediately preceding this meeting, there was a special meeting of the Town of Putney Select Board, which was an executive session. Did you take a decision in this executive session? And if so, what was it?
We did not.
Thank you. Okay, the other one is informal, but some of you may or may not be aware that last evening, a semi-trailer once again destroyed the drive-through at the River Valley Credit Union.
Right, yeah.
And no question, there's nothing left. I happened to walk by shortly after it happened. The sheriff was just arriving. There's some controversy about how often this has happened, and I'm picking your brains here. I know that it happened before in 2018. Does anyone happen to know whether it happened before that?
The Reformer just posted an article, and I believe they say this was the third time.
That's my recollection, is that this would be the third time. My recollection is that the first time was significant damage, but nothing as catastrophic of what we saw today if you drove by it, because it's pretty remarkable. The second time was mostly catastrophic, but not quite as dramatic, I don't think, as what we saw. But this time it was clear that significant damage. And I know that it is posted in there, no trucks, and I thought it was pretty clearly posted in more than one place, is my recollection, but I might be wrong. And it's private property, so it's not our jurisdiction, but it's pretty dramatic. So
yeah.
I know an eyewitness, Mr. Chairman, who said it was obvious it was going to happen. So she just stood there in front of the library and watched it happen.
Wow.
I'm sure from the ground it's completely obvious, and I would have to assume that a truck driver would not, if it were obvious to them, I would have to assume they wouldn't have done it. So, but it seems like in order to cause the degree of damage, well, I don't know, I guess I shouldn't speculate about what happened, but
yeah, I mean, this total speculation as to why it actually happened, but it appears that they're using that or trying to use that as a turnaround spot, right?
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so why aren't they using Carroll Brown Way to turn around? Is there something I'm missing there? Wouldn't that make more sense?
Presumably they're headed north on 5 and feel like that's their best option. I don't know, and we could speculate a lot. I'm interested, Mr. Fairman, whether is that just a point of interest, or are you getting at something?
No, I was simply, the people have been talking about this around town, and various people have been coming up with various numbers. And I was curious, since we would have a pretty large group of well-informed people here, what you all might come up with. And actually, Susan Small here asked me, the Reformer asked me earlier this afternoon if I knew anything about it. And she said she was told 3 or 4 times by, apparently that's what somebody told our sheriff's deputy, Javala, I believe his name is, Brian Javala.
Uh-huh.
So and apparently he's, as a matter of interest, he has now posted a press release on the Sheriff's Department website about this. By the way, I think we may once again owe our approval to our fire chief, Mr. Goddard, for his handling of the situation over here. I noticed that the sheriff's cruiser was parked in front of the semi-trailer. Then I noticed that they parked a 30 or so ton fire engine in front of the semi-trailer. And my impression is that the driver may have indicated, that the trucker may have indicated that he was planning to drive away. So I interpreted that as a dare in the best Vermont sense of how we do things hereabouts.
Well, hopefully, I mean, I would have to think that some very strategically placed, those concrete sort of barrier posts would make it clear. I don't know. I mean, the bank's insurance company can't be happy about this. So I don't know. I'm not sure whether there was, other than signage, I'm not sure whether there were any other specific moves taken after the last couple times that it happened. So, but I'm guessing somebody's gonna at some point put their foot down. I don't know what that'll look like.
Well, I assume once you get in there, you probably, with a big truck like that, you probably don't have anywhere to go except through the drive-through.
Well,
I've walked through there many times. There's plenty of room without driving through the drive-through. No question.
No, I don't mean through the drive-through, but I mean I think it narrows back there in a way that they're not expecting.
Well, as I say, because I walk everywhere around Putney, and that happens to be my bank. I walk by there all the time. And there's no doubt that, especially with the parking lot empty as it was yesterday evening, being after business hours, there was plenty of room to drive a semi-trailer through there without hitting anything, because there really wasn't anything you had to hit.
Yeah.
You had to have some skill to actually hit the canopy.
Wow. I'm not sure it's up to us to speculate what was in. But it is quite a sight. I was impressed by it, and it's unfortunate because I mean the bank was closed today, and it's obviously not good for business, and it's going to take some time and some money to clean it up. So
yeah,
it's a dilemma. But all right, anything else on public comment on items not on the agenda? Doesn't sound like it. So that would bring us back to other business, which we had gone back to public comment on items not on the agenda from. So any other business? I don't see anything in the chat. And I don't hear anything from anybody. We have already had an executive session, so I'm assuming we don't need another one. Is that safe to assume, Karen? Okay, good. And our next meeting date is June 30th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. And that will in fact be at the fire station. And if there's nothing else, Karen, I am not going to be here on July 14th. So I just want to say that now while I'm remembering it. We are out of town for, but other than that, is there a motion to adjourn?
make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night, Howard.